Flava Flav.
I'm excited, man. Freaking 2 all-stars right here.
This is the first time we've
the
both been in
talent.
the room.
Man.
Yeah, we just probably...
You guys are the talent.
Well,
We're just here hanging out.
it's good stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Are we good, Eli? Cool.
Test 1. Good levels.
We're all good. You want to take it off?
All you, buddy.
All me? Well, today...
4 out of 4 today.
Today's been a long day, but this is by far the podcast I've been looking forward to the most, as I think a lot of us have in this room. And unfortunately, the people that are listening don't get to see what we're looking at, but we're looking at a fine bottle of whiskey on the table with some tasting glasses around it. And the folks on YouTube will be able to watch this. But across the table from me, we have Mike Kellogg, who is CWA's Volunteer Veteran Hunt Program Coordinator. We have Jeff Smith, who is the co-host. And then, Mike, if you want to introduce our other guest for me and kind of talk about how you guys got in touch with each other.
Yeah, buddy. Across from me, I've got Kris Koenig, founder of Golden Beaver Distillery. And Kris and I have become pretty good buddies. It's kind of an interesting story, the way that the relationship developed. It was it Veteran Weekend? Or
Probably.
It might have been Veteran Weekend.
How many years ago?
2 and a half.
Okay, so recent.
Yeah, probably 2 years ago. And I reached out to a buddy because it was one of those things where we were getting people like canceling left and right.
Yeah.
Right? We had to fill a
Every
spot.
year.
Yeah. And it
Veteran
was like,
weekend, man. It's tough. That'd be a fun weekend.
and one of the busiest weekends ever for the Veteran Hunt Program. And reached out, and there's a guy that I was turned on to, Kris Koenig and his son, Nils Koenig. They went out, had no idea who they were, never heard of them before. They went on a hunt with Mike Collins, with Mike Collins at Moon Lake Duck Club. And I don't remember what they shot. I think they had an all right shoot.
We did 2 straps in about an hour and a half.
Oh, nice. It was a good
It
hunt.
was a good hunt.
It was a good
Got
hunt.
some cool pictures from that day, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I get a phone call afterwards saying, hey, thanks for the hunt. Really appreciate it. My name's Kris Koenig, and I want to get involved with your CWA Veteran Hunt Program. And I'm like, okay, cool. Right on. What caliber? What do you got going on? And he explained to me Golden Beaver Distillery, and then he said, I want to talk to your boss. And I was like, okay, well, that's Jeff Smith. So I got you in touch with Jeff Smith, and then the rest is history. I mean, the partnership and our relationship back and forth has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah,
It's been
good
great.
stuff.
And that was about 2 weekends before my son deployed
That's right.
on his 3rd deployment. So it's really an important hunt.
Awesome.
Wow, how special is
stuff.
that? That's awesome.
So what did you do, Jeff, once you took over from the communications?
Yeah, so basically we're just kind of talking about the partnership, right? And you guys were wanting to kind of have a bottle that the proceeds went back to the Veteran Hunt Program and putting our logo on it. And so myself and Mike Peters went and toured the distillery there in Chico and tasted a lot what you had. And me and Mike were joking afterwards in the parking lot. We're like, I didn't taste anything that I didn't like. And I was like, I know it could be dangerous in there. And but it was just kind of eye-opening to me, just the whole bottling process. You guys are making everything there and just kind of how much work goes into the craft. I just found that extremely interesting. But you've been at it for a long time.
Well, we started in 19 as far as the distillery, but prior to that, I may or may not have been moonshining in my garage to develop the recipes.
Right.
So,
And what's the difference between some of the stuff that you guys are using in terms of ingredients?
well, we were one of the only 3 of us in the country that actually use rice in their bourbon. And I'm the only one, I think, that does a full rice whiskey. So it's very unique. And we just found out just before I went to the airport to pick up Ron here that we got a gold medal from the John Barleycorn Society.
Congratulations.
Awesome.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Good
That's
stuff.
awesome.
So we'll put a little gold sticker on it next week.
Right on.
There you go.
Congrats.
So-
Oh, boy.
Now, is that like a Cal Rose? What are you guys using?
It's Cal Rose.
Okay.
So Cal Rose and Cal Rose rice malt. We have one of the only rice maltsters in the country, or the only rice maltster in the country, in Chico. So it's all homegrown.
Was that the idea to make it a local business, use local products, that
Yes.
are, that's great.
Yeah, the idea is to keep carbon footprint really low, keep it down, and make something that speaks to the area. And rice is it.
And you guys give back to a lot of different other nonprofits that are local as well.
There's, I had Marysville Police Officer Association is picking up a case right now for their dinner.
That's great.
So when you were starting in your garage, may or may not have been making moonshine, did you anticipate this becoming a future business for you, or did it just kind of fall into your lap?
No, so I was a filmmaker at the time, and my brother was in Ho Chi Minh City. He runs a couple of businesses out of there, and he came home to visit my parents and came over to the house, and I had a small 1 liter cask that I had filled some bourbon in, rice bourbon, and he, we opened it up. Typical. You don't drink alone; you always drink with somebody, and I poured him a glass, and he took 2 tastes, and he goes, "When are we going to business?" And that's where it started.
No kidding.
Right on.
So,
and it seems like it's kind of exploded from there. I mean, I just saw Mike Kellogg's post about you guys being in Costco's now.
Well, ABC rules restricts me from saying that because I cannot promote a retailer. But yes, we are. We're expanding across this area. There'll be 2 more warehouses in Sacramento Woodland area in the next week or so, and onward to the Bay Area.
That's awesome. I've got buddies that are asking when it's coming down to the Delta area Costco's and whatnot. So people are looking for it.
Yeah, we'll have them bug the managers of each warehouse.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how it happens.
And people could also buy it online through your website?
They can buy it online through our website, and people that are outside the state of California, in about 2 weeks, we're launching something called MASH Networks, which is connected to a retailer in Washington, D.C., which has shipping rights to 48 states. So
that's
awesome.
great.
And just to clarify, the bottle that is going back to the Veteran Hunt Program is just this bottle that's in front of us,
just
correct?
the Pacific Flyway.
Just the Pacific Flyway one. So if you guys are on the website and are buying it for the purpose of giving back to CWA, it is just the Pacific Flyway bottle, but he does have other stuff available for purchase.
Yeah. We may expand the program.
Right on.
What out of all the different ones that you make, I mean, what's the most popular in terms of, is it a whiskey, a bourbon? I know you guys do that Beaver Liquor Moonshine, which I've told a bajillion people, it's like the smoothest thing you've ever tasted. And when we were tasting it, you're like, you got to be careful with that one. It's very good.
They'll sneak up on you.
Yeah.
They're like my children, we'll have our favorites, but our big seller right now with said warehouse is our Honey Run, honey flavored whiskey, which is dedicated to the campfire up in Paradise.
Yeah, that's
that
awesome.
took out the bridge.
Yeah.
And we raised $40,000 for the new bridge construction through the sale of that bottle.
Good for you guys. That's phenomenal. Giving back to the community.
But it's really good. It makes a perfect old fashioned. So if you like old fashions after your hunt, it's a good one to pick up. The Flyway, I gotta tell you, it's a great sipper.
Yeah, we're seeing it a lot of like duck clubs that we go visit. It's in the cabinet, and I think obviously that we're tied to it is great. But I think you just look at the logo as a duck hunter. Got the snow geese out there, Pacific Flyway. It's just a cool looking bottle, right?
Yeah. There's a lot going on in that label.
Yeah.
Because the reason we're called Golden Beaver is that in 1800, the estimate number of golden beaver in the Upper Sac Valley was about 3 million. So you got to kind of look at the terrain and kind of imagine what it was like. The Flyway took, millennia to build.
Yeah.
And that Flyway was supported by the beavers and those beaver ponds. So if you look at the label, there's a golden beaver on every label we have, links back to that.
That's awesome.
So we wouldn't have the Flyway if it wasn't for the beaver.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great tie-in, and I just think it's a unique bottle, label, and as a duck hunter, seeing an organization that's giving back to local causes and the conservation, that just makes you something that you want to support.
Thanks.
Not everyone's doing that, so thank you
Appreciate
so much for that.
Well, you can thank my wife for that.
Yeah.
The company launched in a car. We were driving back from our cabin in Colorado, and it's an 18-hour road trip. We just do it in one take. We don't stop and waste time, just drive home. Because you end up being at a hotel and you wake up, shit, I could have been home already, right? So it's like, let's just drive. And so we were kicking around the idea of the distillery, and we drove by a liquor store in Saratoga, Wyoming. And that liquor store is called Beaver Liquors, but it's the French spelling of liquor, the actual spelling. And I said, yeah, let's do Likker and do a moonshine. And she said, you will not. And we started this argument from Saratoga to Rock Springs. It's about a 4-hour drive. And the argument went from calm discussions to just top of the lungs screaming at each other. And so we kind of cooled down. About an hour outside of Rock Springs, she goes, well, when I used to work up at the museum in Paradise, there was this beaver called the Golden Beaver. And she's told me the story about the impact of the beaver in the area and its demise by the Hudson Bay Company. Didn't want the U.S. in the fur trade. So starting about 1829, they started sending down 200 trappers and their families every year. And they would start at the Oregon border. They'd start in Oregon. And then they worked their way down. And it was a scorched earth policy. They took every fur-bearing animal they could. And the idea was to decimate our fur trade, and we wouldn't go into the fur trade. Well, of course, the golden beavers, that 3 million golden beavers got wiped. Not to extinction, but they got hit really hard. Mm-hmm. And I really wonder what it was like for the migration in that last half of 1800s until the early part of the 1900s when UC Davis said, hey, rice could be grown here, and created the rice thing.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't the beaver ponds, there wasn't any refuges, So the ducks, it was like I saw dry earth, they're just coming and eating off the ground. They weren't nesting, they weren't doing anything. So,
have you been a waterfowl hunter in California your whole life?
Yes, waterfowl hunting I didn't get turned on to it until about 10 years ago.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I was a hunter. Did a little pheasant. I grew up in Elk Grove. We had pheasant down there, occasional pheasant hunting there. Then, of course, I went on and did my adult career. It took me out of the state. And about the time I started getting into writing the film Assaulted Civil Rights Under Fire, I said, I'm missing out. I mean, I need to get out there. There's so much great hunting in California, and I need to be doing it. So got into it, got a dog. The dog, I still have her. She's a great dog. She was gun shy, so I bred her, and ended up with my dog Rio. You've met her.
Rio's a great dog.
And so the progress of going from training a dog, getting him trained up, doing a lot of pheasant hunting, doing a lot of duck hunting, all came together. You can't I honestly don't think you can duck hunt without a dog, and you need to have that.
It's the experience. It's the experience that brings it all together.
Yeah, without a dog, it's not the full circle, right? I mean, yeah, it's great, but when you have a dog there, man, even if it's a slow day, it's just, I don't know, you're loving on your buddy.
Especially if you're out there by yourself, if you have no dog, you're just sitting there hanging out in the sky.
Hanging out with your best friend, right?
And you need a critic when you're in the blind, too.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got 2 or 3 labs?
We have 4 now.
4 labs,
geez.
That's right.
Yeah, we just rescued a lab that was a CNI school dropout, and we get them out of a stupid stage and start working them.
Yeah.
It's much easier to train, I think. I mean, there's probably people listening to this that are better trainers, have a lot more knowledge, but I think the best way to train a dog is have another dog.
Yeah.
There's definitely that where you have the older dog that you're starting to phase out, and then you have the younger 1-year-olds, and they learn, and know what's going on. I think it helps out personally, but that's not always the case because some older dogs don't necessarily like younger dogs around, so it could be hard. But I agree with you. They do learn from each other.
Learn the good habits and the bad habits.
Yeah.
So Rio's mom is JoJo, and she got gun shy early on, and she didn't want to be around it. So I was training Rio at a launcher, and she didn't like the fact he was getting the dummy, and so she started chasing. And so we started out, she'd be 30 yards away and slowly moved in, and by the end of that summer, she was right in on it. And we took her out, and she wasn't going to shine anymore.
Oh, worked it out.
Good.
Worked out. That's great.
Like reverse psychology for the dog.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, how old is the dog that the dropout?
The dropout is a year.
Okay.
And
That's young.
He's super young,
young.
and we're slowly doing the retrieve. We do slow retrieves in the house every night, and just throw a dummy, and they go out and they come back and they come out, and Rio just walks it, but he does it for an hour and a half. I mean, he just wants that interaction and engagement, and so you don't need to, be in your backyard. It's just the constant go back, and you can do a lot in your living room. I mean, I do hand signals in the living room. I'll misthrow the dummy so he doesn't see where it ends up, and so it's all good.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So
Well, I think we should transfer a little bit of the focus down to the bottle that's in the center of the table if we want to pour this out so we can start talking about the product that we have in front of us and kind of give everybody a description of what these glasses are and what purpose they serve, because these aren't your normal household glasses, I would say.
So what you're looking at here is called a Glencairn glass. It was actually developed for tasting whiskey. And the reason why it's shaped like it's a chimney at the top is that you want all of the aromas to come up to your nose. If you have a rocks glass, like most of us drink our whiskey at night, and you put ice on it, those vapors get suppressed a little bit. And then, of course, you have this big open top and all the smells go away. And if you're trying to smell what the whiskey is, you're trying to smell the complexity of the spirit that was developed, you don't get that. So this Glencairn glass helps you do that. Had to do a pass there. So this is a little over 2-year-old whiskey, and we do it in a batch. We do a big batch, so we can fill 2 barrels at a time.
And how big are these barrels we're talking about?
These are 53-gallon oak barrels. So they're both American oak barrels. One barrel is brand new and freshly charred. That's where we burn the inside of the barrel because we want to get some carbon on the inside of the barrel. It helps mellow the spirit down. Then we toast them as well. So the toasted barrel opens up the wood. You warm it up before you burn it, and you warm up into the middle grain, basically expand that barrel, and that creates pathways that the distillate can work into the wood, because 80% of the taste of this whiskey is not from the rice, it's from the wood. Okay. So when you're drinking a whiskey, the color and the tannins that you get, the vanillin, so it tastes like a cookie, or baking spices, that all comes from the wood. It doesn't come from the distiller.
Gotcha.
And so there's always this little battle between cooper and distiller, but we have to acknowledge that most of the flavor comes from the wood. So we do one brand new barrel to get certain notes. We get the spices, and we get the spicy cinnamon notes out of the new barrel. And then we use a used bourbon barrel that's 4 to 5, 6-year-old bourbon barrel, let's say from Wilderness Trail or Buffalo Trace, and we fill those. And what we're trying to do there is we're trying to extract the contents of that barrel that it developed over a period of time. So imagine when you dump a barrel, you don't sit there for a week letting it drain. You dump a barrel, it dries out, but all that flavor is still locked in those staves. Well, alcohol is a solvent. So you put in fresh alcohol, it immediately goes into those staves and starts extracting those flavors out. So that's what creates a very complex whiskey. So you'll have those young baking spice notes, the spice notes, and then you get into the caramels and more of the confectionery notes from the used barrel. And that's how we do it.
Very interesting.
So what's the proper way to taste whiskey out of a glass like
Any
this?
way you like.
That's my kind of man.
So I'll walk you through. If you're really going to do a tasting, you want to smell it. Okay. And when you smell it, you want to open your mouth a little bit. So don't close your mouth when you smell. Bring it up, move it around. Smell with both your mouth and your nose at the same time. And if you want to see the effectiveness of it, close your mouth and just breathe in, and then open your mouth and breathe in and see the difference.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's a lot
definitely.
harsher if you close your mouth and you just go straight up your nose.
Exactly,
you kinda
because
get
those
like the
alcohol vapors.
Yeah.
Plus the sensors that are your nerves that are there that create your sense of smell and taste, they're different. They're different sensors. They do different jobs, but you need them both to taste the whiskey. So, and then you take a small sip.
I've been doing it wrong for a long time.
So you're saying I'm not supposed to just drink all this at once?
It's a shot.
So you take a small sip because what you're doing now is your brain is what's doing the tasting, not your tongue.
Okay.
Their tongue and your nose are just sending signals to your brain. So you guys have had a taco for lunch, maybe a burrito, a steak, whatever you're having for lunch, granola bar. Pretty benign things compared to alcohol. So your first taste is just a wake-up call to your brain. I'm going to drink this alcohol now. New set of criteria. And it resets what the brain is going to be looking for off your tongue. So big difference than if you just shoot it back, you're just going to get a bunch of alcohol. So you do the first one to kind of reset your palate, and then your second one is your actual taste.
Okay.
And then you want on that taste, you want to chew it. It's called a Kentucky chew. If you're from Kentucky and you think only whiskey and bourbon can be from Kentucky, they call it the Kentucky chew. You just want to chew it, roll it through your mouth, make sure that all of the sensors that are both on the side of your tongue and the top of your tongue are getting involved, and then it kind of do that little back feed on your nose without choking yourself. Get a little bit of that vapor up into your nose, and you'll get the whole picture. Good shit, man. Now, your second one, it's going to be, you're going to catch a lot more flavors.
I definitely noticed the more alcohol forward on the first one when you get that reset, and the second one I don't get any of that.
Yeah.
Right.
You taste all the flavorfulness of the entire drink in
Yeah.
the second round.
Yep.
So basically, as long as you're not switching up drinks, your palate from now on after that first sip should be registered to this
Correct.
drink.
Correct. And so if you're going to do a whiskey tasting, you're going and get a flight, you're going to test at a bar somewhere, you're going to want to do that. Your first one, you go through the whole flight and leave a little bit in the glass so you can go back to that first one, because your palate will continue to reset through the whole flight. And then you may think the first one sucks, and you go back to it and go, wow, that actually is really good.
So is that really hard? Like when they are doing the judging in the contest?
Yeah, what are they looking for?
Are they actually swallowing it? Because if you're drinking a bunch,
No.
Okay,
They're spitting it out.
gotcha.
So, I'm sure that at the
they're
end of
kinda
the
doing
day,
the
at the
chew?
end of the day, I'm sure they're mostly doing the chew.
Yeah.
And then they spit it out.
They're
Yeah.
getting a pretty good head buzz from just spitting it out, though, I bet.
You can. Distillers are even worse. I mean, we walk in, your crew's already on board. You got distillate coming off your still. It's at 140 proof, and we have to make cuts. What we mean by cuts is when do we want to collect that distillate? Where's the good points? And those cuts, the first cut coming off of what we call the heads, you're getting rid of the acetaldehyde alcohol. You're getting rid of all the nasty crap, acetone, things like that you don't want to drink. If you drink cheap whiskey or you do cheap booze, that distiller is leaving that stuff in because that's their goal, is just get the alcohol out.
Okay.
But craft distillers, we really are mindful of not giving you a headache. We're trying not to give you a headache at the end of the night. Of course, that's determined by you and your volume, not by us. So it comes off, starts at about 165 as far as proof, about 158, somewhere in there, at least for us with our rice whiskey. We'll start collecting it. And then about 138, right in there, it'll start going to what we call the tails. And the tails is alcohol and water mix. Now, some of the tails have great flavors, and most of them don't. And so there's an art to stop collecting, let the tails run a little while, and then grab some more of those tails, especially if you're going to barrel the whiskey, because it adds flavor. And that only comes from experience, knowing, okay, that's good tails, bad tails. We collect all the way down through the tails, and we take the tails and we throw them into the next batch, because it's still good alcohol. So,
Gotcha.
Does whiskey age like wine, where you might have, a 10-year-old, a 20-year-old that's going to age well over time?
only in the barrel.
Okay.
So the minute the distiller dumps a barrel, it stops aging.
So if you have a one in your cabinet,
And you think you're doing good keeping it in
yeah,
there.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's nothing. It's just,
It's not going to age anymore.
Gotcha.
It's at where it's at. So if you're a collector of whiskey, I mean, there's people that just collect whiskey and they don't drink it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's sinful. I think it's gluttonous, because you've removed that bottle out of the circulation from somebody else that can have a taste. I collected for, prior to getting into this, back when I was filmmaking, I had a pretty good collection. And then one day I just looked at it and said, crap, let's just drink
gotta
it.
enjoy that.
Bring friends over, drink it, enjoy it.
Now, what about like once you pop the top? I mean, is there?
It'll keep forever.
Okay,
It'll
even
go-
if like bottom of the
Yep.
because I've heard that where it's like if you only have an inch or two at the bottom, hurry up and drink it. No truth to that at
No
all.
truth. So what you want to do is you want to make sure it's corked. Obviously,
Yeah.
put a good air seal on it, because it will oxidize if it's exposed. And then you want to stick it in a dark closet or in a cabinet. Keep it out of direct sunlight, because it'll oxidize through the UV as well.
Okay.
And then it'll keep forever. I've drank some Dusties going back late 1800s.
Wow.
In Scotland. I had a great experience. That's why I'm in this business. I was premiering a film in Edinburgh, Scotland, and happened to meet one of the leading writers of Scotch, a guy named Charlie McLean, and he took me under his wing. I was trapped there because of the volcano in Iceland. I couldn't fly out.
Just happened to be with the right guy. Tracked for the right place.
I got something for you.
Yeah, so we landed in Edinburgh, and the pilot came on and goes, "We're the last plane to fly land in Northern Europe today, and you won't be going home tomorrow." And I was going to go in, premiere the film, fly out the next day, and it wasn't going to happen. So I got stuck, and the woman who organized this science festival said, "Well, my uncle actually is doing this tasting, real famous guy in Scotch, and, I can get you in both his master classes." And I was a typical American in this Scotch class, I will tell you. I was like, "Oh, it's not bourbon." But I tasted some amazing whiskeys, and then we went to dinner, killed a bottle of wine. And then after dinner, it's about 11:30, he goes, "What are you doing for the rest of the night?" I'm like, typical American, I'm going to roll back to my hotel room and pass out, because I had at least, 5-10 shots in his classes. There's 2 classes, 5 each, and then dinner and a bottle of wine. I'm done. He goes, no, you're going to come with me. And we jumped in his Land Cruiser, typical classic Scottish scene. You couldn't written this better. We drive across and we go down to this old farmhouse. We walk in the kitchen. The table's 400 years old. The kitchen table's 400 years old. The house is probably built around the table. It's a humongous table. And he went in the back of the house and came out with these wooden boxes that had these Robitussin bottles in it, like old-time Robitussin kind of hexagonal bottles. Yeah. And he had distillate going back to the 1800s.
Wow.
And it was from all the different distilleries around Scotland. And he shared that with me, and we stayed up, and he sat there and educated me that night. You drank a dram, you did a taste, you drank water, you did a taste, you drank water. I walked out of that place at 7 o'clock in the morning sober.
Wow.
But my education on whiskey was just totally filled. I mean, it was an excellent experience. And that's what set the seeds for eventually why we're drinking this right here.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
So it's great. It was a great experience.
Yeah, going back to winning the medal that you were talking about, when you submit a whiskey for judging, what are those judges looking for in the tasting or whatever their process is to award those awards?
The first thing they'll do is they'll look for faults. So faults would be too much heads, too much tails, something the distiller screwed up in the distillation process.
What do you mean by the tails and the faults?
That's the tails where you do the cuts, where the heads are above the good alcohol and the tails are below the good alcohol and proof wise.
Okay.
You put too much heads in, it's gonna be alcohol forward. You'll taste the acetone. You go, I know that's
cheap booze.
That's
Yeah.
It tastes like college.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So they're looking for that. They're looking that you put too much tails in, so it's got a little watery funk to it. Some people like funk in their whiskey. Judges don't like funk, so you just don't do it. You stay away from it. And then they're looking for the taste profile. What's your grains? What are your grains presenting? The beauty of working with rice, which I can't believe, American distillers are so xenophobic against rice. That's the wrong word, but they just have this problem with using rice in distillation. In fact, somebody on a TikTok podcast the other day said rice is an unacceptable grain for whiskey. Well, I'd love to invite that guy here tonight and have him taste this because it's totally different. I mean, it's a great base for a whiskey, and you're fooling yourself. When we do the distillation process, when you do the fermentation, which is the first step, you're converting the starches in those grains to sugar. It's only a function of getting that sugar out of those grains, converting the starch into sugar to introduce the yeast to convert it to alcohol. So you are getting flavors that come across in the distillation process, but the whole idea of distillation is to distill to only that thing that you're looking for, which is ethanol. And that ethanol will have those characteristics in it, but it doesn't really matter. You take a rice whiskey, you could take a corn whiskey, you can take a wheated whiskey. There'll be slight variations in them, but one is not better over the other. They'll all taste good.
Yeah.
It's just they're just different sources of getting that starch. And so we're lucky to have a great grain developed right here in California at the Cal Rose.
Yep, absolutely.
It's got a high starch and it works great.
Can you tell the differences? Everyone sees whiskey and bourbon, and you can tell people the difference between what makes a bourbon and what's a whiskey.
Sure. So all bourbon is whiskey,
Right.
but not all whiskeys are bourbon.
Yeah.
So bourbon was defined by the Congress at the urging, of course, one state, Kentucky, back in 1964, that it has to be distilled at 160 proof or below. So that means, all higher alcohol you don't collect. You can only collect from 160 and below. It has to go in, your distillate has to go into a new American oak barrel. Cooper's got their little part of that. It has to be charred. You can't go into that barrel over 125 proof. Most smart distillers will do barrel entry proofs from like 100 to 110, because all you're going to have to do is add water to bring that proof down to bottle it. Why add water, which dilutes the flavors? Yeah. So if you start lower proof, you're going to get more flavor. So if you're going to become a whiskey aficionado, always ask, what's your entry proof? If they're up at 120, 125, Beam, Wild Turkey, all the big guys, because they're trying to show as much alcohol into a barrel as possible, you're going to get that $22.50 per handle price taste. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It'll have that taste. Now, I love Beam and I love Turkey.
Yeah.
I'm not dissing them. We all grew up on it. But I'm saying if you're really looking for flavor, you're going to look for somebody who's putting a barrel entry proof that's between 100 up to about 115 at the highest. Because then you're going to taste more of the barrel. And like I said earlier, most of the flavor comes from the barrel, not from the distiller.
Yeah, I would have never thought that going into it. I would have thought, had to do with the ingredients and how you're doing it, but it makes sense how you explain it.
Now, as you improve your tasting, you'll be able to taste the corn in your whiskey. You'll be able to taste the rye. You'll be able to recognize the wheat if it's a wheater like Maker's Mark has a very, it's called a wheated bourbon. You have a very simple taste to that. You'll know it.
Yeah, I'm a Maker's fan. That's good stuff.
It's also a good whiskey start. Basil Hayden, however, is a high rye bourbon, and it's different. You take those two, you put them side by side. You don't need to be a sommelier level taster to go, okay, this has got rye in it, and this one has wheat. If you go to Scotch, you're going to get barley. That's all you're going to get. All you do is it's a barley experience. If you go to Irish, which I really recommend people, get a couple bottles of Irish whiskey. And I'm not talking, Jameson. I'm talking like Redbreast or Teeling or one of the better distilleries, because they use oats, and you will be able to see the difference between oats and wheat and everything else. And it's really good stuff. I mean, it's good to have that. You got to exercise your palate. Yeah. If all you do is go home and drink your fifth of Jameson every week, that's what your palate's going to taste.
Right.
And that's not good. It's like eating, a Danish every day,
Does the color of the bottle change anything? You're saying once it goes in the bottle, it's pretty much what it is. But I know, like with beer, it does change the taste, darker bottles, etc. Is that a thing with the whiskey?
It's not a big thing. It used to be a bigger thing in the past to use a colored bottle until consumerism came in, because you wanted to see the color of the whiskey.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of food regulations came from whiskey, believe it or not. So the first FDA Food Protection Act that came along, something called Bottle and Bond, which states that the whiskey has to be produced at the same distillery over 2 seasons, because they do a winter, spring, and they do a fall, winter type of arrangement. You have to go into the bottle at 100 proof. That's to stay at 100 proof. And it can't have additives. You can't have caramels, and you can't have iodine, and all these things that people used to put in their whiskeys prior to, and during Prohibition. After Prohibition, this thing came out and said, this is called Bottle and Bond. It is the first food act in the United States, because people were getting poisoned from iodine, shoe polish. They put coffee. They put all these different things in it to give the color of the bottle. At that point, where we used to put it in brown bottles, which was probably better for UV, they went ahead and went to clear bottles so the consumer can see, okay, that's the color of my whiskey.
Yeah.
Now, if you guys come tomorrow night, we're going to do our. Unfortunately, listeners probably won't hear this in time. We're going to release our bourbon, and our bourbon is, we did a 2/3 full cask of our bourbon, and it aged very uniquely. The whiskey is a very, very dark brown, and it's distinct. I mean, you look at it and go, well, that's different, and that's why, we'll put it in a clear bottle, because we want you to go, oh, well, that's different. That looks great. But in reality, we should do some type of blue blocking, UV blocking color on that glass to keep the whiskey from aging, but the consumers won't buy it.
Makes sense.
I see on the bottom of the bottle it says batch number and bottle number. Is that handwritten, or is that printed out on the logo?
That is handwritten.
Wow. So every bottle is handwritten, batch and bottle. And
so everybody on the bottling line is a QC inspector.
Okay.
So they're looking for excessive char. Now, char does get in our barrels because we don't cold filter or chill filter, which is an act where you cool down the whiskey really cold, and all the oils that are in that whiskey will coagulate. And then you skim off the whiskey. So your Jamesons, Jack Daniels, Jim Beam, they all do cold filtration. Because again, the consumer is expecting to look in their bottle, not see any floaties. Craft distillers, we put floaties. I mean, that's our statement. I mean, we don't do this mass production stuff. These are each individually done. So our staff, when they're from the guy that's filling the bottle, to corking the bottle, to putting the labels on the bottle, to hand labeling, they're all part of the QC process of looking and making sure that that whiskey's right, that there isn't something that shouldn't be in there floating around, or we didn't have excessive char. I mean, if we get a lot of char, we got to stop and redo it. We have a whole sequence of how we dump a barrel, and we do a filter on it, a paper filter. before it goes into our mixing tank, and that eliminates most of the char.
Gotcha. Is there a significance of a snow goose as opposed to a white front or any other type of waterfowl?
It's a great question.
It was a great question.
It's a great question.
Well, it wasn't 100 preference.
There wasn't a poll taken and said, which one do you want on the label?
The artist that did these labels, all our labels, is in Belgrade, Serbia. And I reached out. It's like Itwork or one of the freelance websites. And I reached out and I said, look, I need an artist that can do a panel that reeks Autobahn, that looks at it, you go, that's an Autobahn label. And then who would put all these little elements, the beaver in it, of course, and then any wildlife that's associated with that venue or that environment in that venue. And she was great. I mean, she nailed it. This was the first label she did for us, which was a snow goose.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, she did really good. The problem is the war broke out in Ukraine, and we posted a post social media that we supported Ukraine, and she basically just won a rant on our Facebook saying that we don't understand, they're not neo-Nazis, and I'm like, I don't know. She goes, if I could take back my artwork, I could. And we were keeping her busy. I mean, she was doing a label every 4 to 6 months, and that relationship blew up, unfortunately.
Wow.
So live in a very small world.
So now Mike's going to draw your next label for you.
Yes.
Stick figures.
You'll be able to notice those renditions.
Hide the crayons.
But
And on your website, you've got a dedication to the Veteran Hunt Program as well.
yes.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about what that says, just in a nutshell?
Well, we have to. Good time for a drink of whiskey.
There you go.
Yes, sir.
I'll join you.
I come from 4 generations of servicemen. I've lived the experience as a dependent, as a serviceman, and as a veteran. And each stage is a little different, but you need the camaraderie. You need to have human interaction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, my time in the Coast Guard was not combat. I mean, the most combat we faced was tourists at Waikiki. And
Probably not all bad.
no, it was all good.
Yeah.
I mean, Ron is my roommate back in the day, and we have lots of stories, and maybe we could do another podcast on that after hours in the blind. But my experience with PTSD came after my Coast Guard time. I worked for Skin Diver magazine, and I handled the whole Pacific Basin for the magazine. And at that time, we were the 23rd highest lineage magazine in the world, or at least in the United States. And lineage means the amount of ads are in the book. So you'd pick up a Cosmopolitan magazine and a Skin Diver magazine, and it's the same thickness, just to give you an idea. And our job was to go out there and promote dive tourism, help governments develop dive tourism, help the small business guy develop his business, work with the airlines to get tourists on the plane. And it was a very complex job. And I landed in Yap. I used to go to Yap in Micronesia once a quarter. And I went into Yap, and the guy in Yap goes, the operator said, hey, there's this island called Nulu that no one's ever dove. And would you like to go see it? And I said, you don't tell a diver, we're going to go someplace never been dove. You don't want to go. So we jumped on this boat. It was a peace prize from the Japanese. It was a 53-foot, I call it a Yoshi boat. They're kind of a very swept bow and fantail, and kind of like in a big arc. And they were designed to throw nets. So the wheel in the pilot house is actually parallel with the bow and stern, and not perpendicular like you would normally have. So you're driving from the side of the boat. And then this had a little hydraulic remote. And long story short, I play the harmonica, and I was playing Gilligan's Island as we were going out of this place because it just was setting up. I thought this is it, So we got on the boat, and I'll cut this story short and get back to the veteran hunt.
You're good. You're good. I love it.
So we get out of this harbor, and we start going towards Nulu. Now, Thor Heyerdahl, if you guys might remember, did this great journey on the Kon-Tiki to prove that, Polynesians were moving everywhere. They're in South America, they're going through Polynesia, and they could hit these little specks of land all through the Pacific. So I'm sitting there as a former Coast Guard quartermaster / navigator going, I'm just going to watch this guy. This captain's got his act together. I'm going to watch this because this is great because right now it looks like a shit show. And it turned into a shit show. We didn't realize it. We were actually driving into a tropical storm. So when we started at 0 Cs by 3 o'clock in the morning when we missed the island, and we had already turned back to try to get back to Yap, we were in 30-foot seas and probably 50-mile-an-hour winds. I mean, it was, and I've done that in a 180-foot still boat, not a problem. You do it in a fiberglass boat, things get weird. But anyway, captain wasn't all there in his head. Getting on the boat, to start with, he only brought machetes. That was part of the story as well. But I'll kind of skip through it. I drove that boat for about 2.5 hours with a knife at my throat.
Oh, geez.
Because this guy was totally off his knocker.
Oh, my God.
And there's a bunch of other events, and it takes 2 hours and probably this whole bottle of whiskey to talk about.
We got time.
But so I came home, and basically in my own little world, my own world view, could understand what my dad went through.
Mm-hmm.
We have to understand the veteran. And the only person who can truly understand the veterans is a guy like Mike.
Absolutely.
The fellowship, the engagement, getting people out of their hole. That's what got me out. I mean, I was f***ed up. I mean, excuse my language. You could hopefully beep that.
We're going to keep that.
I'm right there with you.
I was messed up for about 4 years.
Okay.
And I probably was not healed, never healed, from that event for probably another 10. And the farther away you get from it, the better. So would the veteran hunt program be great for somebody that just came back from combat? Not so sure.
I agree.
Yeah.
But for the veteran who is 10, 15 years downrange from that event or events, they will be able to handle it. And that's when they need it the most.
Absolutely. No, I think to your point, the very first hunt that we did, my dad's a Vietnam veteran, and I was a foolish young kid. I think I was 8 or 9 and asked him some questions, and there wasn't much reply. But on our very first hunt, it was cool for me to sit back as a son and watch my dad talk to guys like Mike.
Yeah.
Because we heard none of it growing up, and that was cool. But, yeah.
It's really important. It's because talking about it gets you over it. I mean, it does. It doesn't get you over it, but it helps heal.
Right.
And it's really important. And that's why we're committed to support this program in any way we can, to keep it going, to make it bigger, make it more accessible, to get more vets out there. It's just super important. I'm super emotional about this, obviously.
Well, I think it's life-changing, There's just countless folks that we've met, and it's just like, they might not have been a duck hunter ever, but just like going back to that camaraderie and like getting back in tune with the community.
Yep.
That part's life changing, right? You're going back in the outdoors, positive experiences, et cetera, meeting people. That changes people's lives. And I know there's a ton of guys that we've met that are like that. And you have the stories too.
Yeah, you deal with it the most now.
Oh, all the time, yeah. And from an outsider looking in that doesn't know about the veteran hunt program, they look at it as an opportunity to take veterans hunting, right? But that's just, that's just icing on the cake.
That's just
right?
what people
That's
see.
the window
That's
wash.
it. It is so much more involvement internally with guys like Kris, with veterans who have been there and done that, veterans that haven't been there and done that. But as a veteran, you've already been there and done that because you signed on the dotted line, right? Getting together, shooting, being with your brothers and sisters who signed on that same dotted line. Nobody will ever understand that other than somebody who has been through that. Yeah. And Kris, your emotions, I feel the same exact way. There's just so much more to this entire veteran hunt program that I hold extremely close and dear to my heart because I know inside what it means to not just me, but even more so the guys and gals that we surround ourselves with. Yeah. It's huge.
Yeah.
And it's working. I know it's working.
Yeah. Well, it helped my son.
Good.
Gave him something. It gave him an experience to anchor when he went on the next deployment. It gives him something to, positive to think about.
Yeah.
It's hunting is cultural.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything. It's the time in the blind. It's time in the house. It's getting ready, going, coming back, like you've said many times, Mike. But people need those anchors.
Yeah, absolutely. Something to hang on to, something to look forward to, something to look back on, something to pull you out of those times when you are just knee deep and you can't even talk to anybody or get it out what is wrong with you. But those times that were had in the blind or with your brothers and sisters is what you can lean on.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. This, I say it often, and I think it gets misconstrued, but I will tell people that this veteran hunt program helps me while it helps others. Well, what I mean by that is it helps me internally networking with guys and gals and all of these people and staying connected in this service mindset that you're not alone. Right. And guys like yourself and other veterans out there, you're not alone. We are here for sure. Yeah. If we don't talk about it, trust me, there's some way, shape, or form that we can get out into each other and be all right with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think what started out as like just giving people an opportunity to go hunting, it just went way beyond that, and we weren't really expecting that.
Yeah, you look at the numbers back when this started, and it's like, oh, we got out 15 vets this year. Now it's like, oh, we got out 800 veterans. It's like in a time span of 10 years, it's gone from 15 to 800. Like, what about another 10 years?
Yeah.
You're going to have 3,000-4,000. Like,
yeah.
And what's great about it is it's veterans running the program and reaching veterans where, I'm not a veteran myself. I've had a lot of great relationships with the folks, but there's a different bond between servicemen and women, that Carson and I will never have. And we're just super thankful for obviously Mike Kellogg and the Colonel, but just all of our veteran volunteer. I mean, they're out there all the weekends guiding other veterans.
Yeah, and we want to thank them for what they do.
Yeah, because the program wouldn't be what it is today. It wouldn't keep growing. People wouldn't support it, but it's just quality individuals that are not selfish and are there for the right reasons and know that they are making a difference in people's lives and bringing people into the fold.
Yeah, the veterans, your volunteers have been out there. I've had 3 hunts, 4 hunts now. Yeah. We've been engaged with. These volunteers are doing exceptional work.
Yeah, we think so.
They got to wake up. They got to drive. I mean, if they live in Sacramento, they got to drive up to up to Princeton. That's not a short drive at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
They got to do the hunt. They're looking at their watch because they want to get back to their family. They got a soccer game.
Yeah. It's we've used it pretty often, but the full circle thing within the veteran hunt program and most things veteran. But those guys are looking forward to that. They look forward to meeting up with new vets and networking with them. And there's been lifelong relationships that have been established through the Veteran Hunt program.
Yeah.
And those guys absolutely love to do it. I mean, they bug me. Hey, what do we got going on? I need to go. I need to go. Can we shoot moon tomorrow?
Right.
Let's do this. Let's do that.
Thank you so much for helping. Like, no, thank you for letting me come out. Thank you for letting me be thank you for letting me be a part of the program. I was like, man, you've guided 20, hunts. But it's just back to that. People want to help people.
Yeah, and it's just trying to keep up with those guys. I mean, we probably got 14, 15, 16 of those guys. I wish I could name all of them, but they're just...
But look at Mike Collins. Is he 90 or in his 80s?
No, he's 83.
82. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
but I mean, he is.
I got a special spot in my heart for Mike.
He's a go-getter, and he's on it.
Yeah.
It's like, I hope I'm still hunting.
Raccoon story with the ski pole sometime.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
We'll have to get him on here, too.
That would be good.
No, he's great.
Story.
He's got some challenges right now.
He does.
And, if somebody can help, reach out, please, because he's facing some.
Yeah, he's gone through a lot of challenges lately, and he's been a supporter of CWA for a very, very long time, but he's really gravitated towards the veteran stuff. And just talking to him, it's like it keeps him going. Being involved in the program keeps him going.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Have to have something to get you out of bed.
Exactly.
Yep. And if you're an ex-Marine, it's 4:30 in the morning every day.
Yeah.
Those guys are. I went through Navy dive school with a group of recon rangers, and they are, there's a bond there with those guys that I developed during that school. Very special people.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Kris, we appreciate you coming out today. Mike, appreciate you coming back out.
Thank you.
I don't think I could have dreamed this podcast being any better, talking to you guys and drinking whiskey at the same time. It was amazing.
Yeah, and Kris, we really appreciate the partnership, and we're happy to be a partner with you, and just thank you for everything that you're doing for the veteran community.
Yeah,
well, thank you for letting me do that.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Truly appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Save It for the Blind podcast. You can find our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.